Helm is a well-known tool for packaging Kubernetes YAML templates and deploying them on a cluster with a given set of template values. In today's episode, we'll be hearing from a person who, despite the many Helm fans out there, is not a fan of Helm and thinks that its design is fundamentally flawed. His name is Jacco. He's based in the Netherlands. He's a CTO and founder, been working with Kubernetes for quite some time. And there are some issues that he has with Helm that he shared with us, and we want you to listen to get your opinion as well. This is KubeFM, the podcast that broadcasts the greatest and latest trends in the Kubernetes ecosystem, shared by experts who are passionately working on this and sharing their knowledge. Let's take a look. Jacob, if you have a brand new Kubernetes cluster, what are the 3 tools that you're going to install first and why?
Okay, well, that would be Argo CD, first of all, because I think that's a great tool, and it's a great starting point for if you want to do GitOps, right? So I'm a big fan of doing GitOps and, writing all my clusters in YAML files in a Git repo, and then basically Argo CD makes sure that it runs on the cluster and that I don't have to do any manual kubectl commands anymore. Well, I hope hopefully I don't have to do that anymore. But most of that is then automated by Argo CD. Secondly, Prometheus. I think it's really important to have proper metrics on your server. You want to see what's happening there. I think that's important. And then there's some kind of elk stack. So you want to know all kinds of logging that's happening on your cluster. And I think these are great tools that help you to get insight in those loggings and see what's going wrong. I think these are also pretty popular tools. I think they're mature and a good way to start.
All right. Now we got that out of the way. Tell me a little bit more about what you do and who you work for.
Okay, well, I'm a CTO of VidiCrowd. It's a small startup in the Netherlands. We had a bumpy ride the last few years, but we finally get some traction now, which is cool. I'm basically also the developer of most of the platform, but so I'm responsible for the programming of the platform, but also for the maintaining the cluster for that, and that's basically why I started to learn Kubernetes and Helm, and that's also why I wrote this piece that we're going to discuss today.
So, tell me about your technological journey and how you ended up getting into cloud native.
Okay. As a startup, you want to use the most modern tools that are out there, and maintaining your own hardware is not 2023 anymore, right? So you want to go into the cloud, and with a small team, you need to be smart, and you need to use the tools that do most of the things automatically without you having to look at it. And that's why I think Kubernetes is a great tool, and it makes it possible to to specify your cluster and give it a kick, and then it should run, right. And of course, you need some some tools to be able to monitor, but for the most part, it runs automatically, and that's what I like. And that's why I invested a lot of time in learning Kubernetes and the ecosystem and the tools around it. I think it's also a very interesting technology to develop yourself as a developer, because it just development is not only programming anymore, just per se, right? It's the whole thing around deploying it, how it should run in your cluster, and I think that's a good skill to have, which is usable in any situation. If you want to move jobs or whatever, it's a good thing to learn.
Absolutely. In terms of your process learning Kubernetes, what were some of the resources that were most helpful in while you were leveling up? What helped you out the most?
I'm just mostly a hands-on guy, so I just start. You have a cluster. You start, looking up some documentation. Probably I started with just the official documentation, and just get going and trying and making mistakes and trying again and making more mistakes and trying again, etc. Um, I'm not really a fan of doing like courses. Like sometimes I do, but I still, I want to learn it the hard way because I think that's the best way to learn it. To make all the mistakes. And if you do a course, you learn the easy path. But the hard path is not often not in a course. And I think those are opportunities for you to learn, and those are often not in the courses.
And if you had to go back in time to give your previous self advice about how's the best way to learn Kubernetes, would there be anything that you would focus on first or perhaps leave till maybe later on?
Um, well, the way I did is I do this with all the new technologies that I learn. You just stumble upon them. I do some quick assessment whether whether it's worth my time to invest. To invest my time in to investigate it, yes or not, and then and it just start going and find some free time to play with it and learn it. And that's I always do it that way, and I don't think I would do it differently the next time.
In terms of what we want to talk about today, you wrote a bit of a controversial article. And could you tell our audience what that article is about?
Okay, so the article is about my experience with learning Kubernetes and Helm. I found that Helm was a really popular tool in Kubernetes, but I also found that it had some flaws. In the article, I draw a comparison between Helm and some other popular web technology. It's PHP. It was designed like somewhere in the beginning of the 1990s, and I think there's a big parallel between the two because they both uh, take a templating approach to solving a problem. And in general, I don't think using templating is the right way to solve these kinds of problems. And in the article, I argue that also for PHP, there were better alternatives at the time, and still this templating approach caught on, and there were zillions of packages being built with PHP. It grew really big, and kind of the momentum to choose for another uh, technology or other approach was like gone, right? It was just too big, and nobody would leave it anymore. And it's and it's still used, right? There are better technologies, but there's still a lot of legacy in PHP. And I think the same thing holds for Helm. It's big. There are zillions of packages. Everybody's using it, but there are fundamental flaws that are still out there. And I think it's not really easy for Helm to solve them because if you want to solve these fundamental problems, it's like a completely different thing. It's not Helm anymore. Um, but still, I would love to see another kind of approach to packaging Kubernetes projects. Basically, that's what this article is about.
It's clear that there are some things you don't really like about it, but tell me what you really don't like about it. What is it that you don't like about Helm's approach? Perhaps not it's not really doing the things that it says to be doing. Tell me more about that.
Okay, so what Helm basically does is you write your YAML files as a template. So you insert some commands in your YAML file that do some replacements, right? That's what templating does. But Helm doesn't treat the files as Kubernetes resources in any way. It even doesn't treat it as a YAML file in any way. It just treats it as a plain text file. And first of all, I think you lose a lot of information there that could be, beneficial for the language. Um, one part that you lose is that, for instance, I have some examples in my article where, for instance, uh, if you want to insert some values in your YAML file, and this value is a multi-line string, basically, then you also have to make sure that you're indenting it in the right way, which I think is a horrible way to write your code or write your template. That you have to actually take care of which indentation level you're actually working on and have to code that in your template. I think that's really horrible and really user unfriendly and basically horrible. And it's really easy to make mistakes there, which makes it, you need more debugging, more testing, etc. And you need to test all the cases. I think that's really a horrible experience for the developer. Another example that I show in the article is that, for instance, you have normal Kubernetes YAML has a very strict schema, right? You have very good, well specified fields, and these fields have very well specified types of values. And your editor can help you with that. And if you make a mistake there, you immediately get a proper warning there. So that's really helpful. But as soon as you start using Helm, this is basically lost because your editor doesn't know about the Helm structure and the structure of your values file in your Helm in your project. I give an example from a project where you want to specify, for instance, the limits on your Kubernetes resource. Now, specifying the limits in a deployment is part of the specification of a deployment. It's very well defined and well structured. Now, if you want to have define this in your Helm project, then you kind of have to copy this entire schema of specifying limits into your Helm template, and basically you're re-implementing Kubernetes in your Helm, the Kubernetes deployment in your Helm project, which is also a horrible thing, I think, because it's all already been invented and you don't want to invent it twice.
What about Helm packages? Do you think those are bad too?
No, of course not. I mean, a lot of people spend a lot of time implementing Helm packages, and they test them thoroughly, and they're being used in production environments for years already, and they're stable. There's nothing wrong with that, right? As long as they're stable, then it's fine. I only think that Helm by itself is not really a user-friendly tool, right? I think it can do a better way in helping you, write stable packages, helping you with debugging it, helping you with writing less code, and helping you with writing very readable code. And I think in that sense, Helms does a very bad job. But of course, there are many brilliant packages out there, and I use them all the time. And I'm not going to re-implement them all just because I don't like Helm, right?
And could you share any examples of this more specifically?
Well, I use, for instance, Ingress Nginx a lot. I think it's well written, right? It's well tested. There's nothing wrong with that. Or the Prometheus Cube Prometheus stack is also a good example of that. It's a big project. There are many resources there. Documentation is a bit, lagging, but in a sense, I think it's a brilliant project. But I would, I would hope that there would be a better tool for the developers of those projects, so that they would have an easier life. So I want to give an example, for instance, from Ingress, Nginx Ingress. And what you see there is that it kind of mimics the standard Kubernetes deployment schema regarding the liveness probes and the readiness probe. These are very well-defined schemas in the original Kubernetes deployment resource, but the developer of the Ingress Nginx template wanted to allow the user also define the liveness probe and readiness probe values. So what he did is he kind of copied the original deployment values for the liveness probe and the readiness probe into the template. So basically, he was re-implementing part of the original Kubernetes deployment resource into his Helm definition. And first of all, I think that's just a waste of time because there already is a proper resource. And secondly, you lose the strict schema that the original deployment resource has, and that the values file for the Helm schema doesn't have this strict schema anymore.
So, can you tell me then about when was the moment where you realized, okay, I can conclusively say that Helm is wrong? Was it, love or hate at first sight, if we want to call it that? And or was it something that developed over time?
I think I've never been really in love with Helm because I always do some kind of due diligence with a new, tool or resource. I want to just make sure that it's, worth my time. And I did the same with Helm, and I've, what I saw, on the internet on various projects, I didn't really like what I saw. I mean, if you look at the files that are produced by various projects, they're kind of unreadable. And to me, that's like an indication that the technology is not really either not really complete or it's just flawed from the beginning. And that's why I took the approach that okay, if there's a good project out there that's using Helm, and it's well maintained and it's stable, fine, I will use it, but I will not write my own Helm scripts, write my own Helm packages, because I simply think it's not worth my time.
In the JavaScript ecosystem, there's a popular meme with two books: a thick book about JavaScript and a slim manual on JavaScript, the good parts, meant to make fun of what language features you should use or not. Do you think most people should restrict their use of Helm and perhaps limit to using it only as a package manager?
Well, I would definitely advise that. I do that in my own projects. I use Helm for the package that I want to import, right? So not my own packages, but packages from other people. But for my own projects, I use Kustomize a lot. I'm not saying that Kustomize is the perfect tool. It has its own flaws, but at least it's strict, it's well defined, it's well documented, and it serves the purpose of you know yeah, configuring and defining my own project for the various deployments that I have. And I think it matches very well with with the GitOps approach. There's good support for Kustomize in Argo CD, so that together makes that Kustomize for me is a very workable solution. I don't think Kustomize is flawed. I think there are better. I think there will be some evolution at some point where there are better tools that do the job than currently Helm and Kustomize do. But still, for me, Kustomize does the job, in my own projects.
Okay. But would you say that, in terms of the love, Helm has a pretty strong community behind it, a fair amount of interest. Do you feel like Customize receives the love that it deserves?
It's not as big as Helm is right now, but I see continuous improvements, and it is used by a lot of people. So I don't think it will die. It will improve, but Kustomize is not a package manager, and it's not designed to be, and it doesn't. I don't see it as a starting point for writing a package manager based on Kustomize. I don't think that's the right tool for that. So Kustomize is great for basically for your own projects and managing your own projects, and that's what it's great for, not as a package manager.
And if not using Customize in Helm, what templating strategy would you recommend? And do you even, just as a side question, do you even use Helm at the moment?
I don't use Helm for my own projects, but I do import other people's Helm projects. Just as a, as long as I don't have to have to look at it, then it's fine. Um, but to start with your own first question, I don't think you should see Kubernetes packages as templates. They're, just get rid of the word templates basically, because they're not templates, they're packages. And these packages define some resources, and you should be able to configure those resources. But that's a different thing as templating. It's basically the word templating that triggers my fury.
Okay, good. Speaking of emotions, you just mentioned Fury. What was the reaction from the community towards the article that you wrote? You put your criticism out there. Did you receive any criticism back?
No, I did not. I did not receive any hate mail or people banging on the door or whatever. Or I haven't been blocked on any site, so that's all great. I actually got a lot of positive feedback, and people saying, "Hey, good write up. I agree," or people playing with their own projects, and I didn't get any critical notes. So maybe people who are don't like my work, they didn't respond, or they just ran away quickly, I don't know. But I think I touched upon something that a lot of people actually knew, but they didn't kind of write it down, or they just go with the flow and say, okay, this is big, so it's probably a good thing. So I hope I made a few people think again, and see that although it's a big project, right? There are zillions of packages. Doesn't mean that it's that it's a great, that it's not that doesn't have any flaws, basically.
Got it. And was that essentially your goal in publishing an article that could be, seen as spicy or controversial or polarizing, to sort of wake people up to the idea that you don't feel like you're the only one with these opinions? Or what were some of the other goals you had when you wrote the article?
Well, I didn't write a lot of articles yet, so but I kind of have the idea that as soon as something is growing in my mind, I feel that it doesn't is an opinion that it is not alive somewhere on the internet. Then you do the research and think, hey, are there any other people that think the same way? And I couldn't find any criticism there, and I found that strange, because to me the flaws are very clear, and that actually made me write it. And it was also kind of good as a good starting point to write the first article. It wasn't my first, but anyway, one of my first.
Do you anticipate you'll be writing other controversial articles like this in the future? Or what else do you have in mind in terms of your next steps?
Well, maybe I want to write an article about why U.S. politics is flawed, but I'm I'm not so sure if I want to do that, because I think I will receive some hate mail there, and I'm not a U.S. citizen, so why do I care? But anyway, yeah, probably I will. Like I said, if something is in my mind and I think it's an opinion. That I think other people should know about, and I can't find any other people that think the same way, then I'll probably write it down. That's what I want to do more often.
And once again, as we spoke in the beginning, helping others, troubleshoot, get through some of these difficulties is very much a big part of, making it easier for Kubernetes to be adopted, helping people level up. So grateful for those contributions.
Right.
When you're not looking for controversial topics, it looks like you're into both skiing and scuba diving, two adventurous activities. Tell me more about that. How'd you get started with both of those?
Well, actually, scuba diving was like 15 years ago. It was my professor at university that did it, and I thought, okay, that sounds like a fun activity. So just took some classes and did some diving here in the Netherlands and abroad, and it was it's great. It's really, you're really on your own. You can be very mindful if when you're deep under the water. And I think that's really relaxing. And of course, it's very beautiful under there. And then skiing is it's really my passion. I just love it to be out there in the cold, up in the mountains. It's perfect. I'm a little bit sad that climate change is making all the ice melt and the snow melt, and you're here in Europe. Some ski locations already closing down, and never, they're not going to open up this year anymore. So that's a sad thing. So hopefully, I can do it for the rest of my life. But let's see.
Get a little bit more selective. If someone has to go scuba diving in the Netherlands, because it's not often that we hear about that as a hot spot, what are the best places to go?
Well, there's actually Zealand. It's not New Zealand, but we have Zealand in the Netherlands as well.
The original Zealand, the real Zealand.
The real Zealand, yeah. It gave the name to New Zealand. And it's actually there are a lot of islands and lakes around there, and a lot of people in the Netherlands also don't know, but it's actually really nice to see their reefs. There's a lot of life out there, and it's a good place to start diving because it's not really deep. Sometimes the water can be a bit rough, and what's that called? Not really transparent.
Yeah, like murky.
Right?
Yeah.
But it's a great place.
Did not know that. I've been to the Netherlands several times, and I was yet to find out about scuba diving there. So that's good to know. Last but certainly not least, for people that want to get in touch with you, whether it's about scuba diving, skiing, or controversial takes around Helm, what's the best way to do so?
Yeah, so just find the Medium article and drop a note there. You can find me on LinkedIn, just under my name. Then I'll respond when I can.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for sharing your time and your thoughts today, and look forward to crossing paths with you soon.
Okay, thank you. Thank you,
Take
Mark.
care.
Bye-bye.